Hi, welcome to The State Room, a podcast dedicated to covering the key issues and events that will define the future of our state. I'm your host, Scot Mussi. Today on our program, we're going to be talking about the future of school choice here in Arizona. On July 2nd, the Protect Education Now Committee, an anti-ESA or school choice committee, filed signatures with the Secretary of State with an initiative that would effectively kill the biggest and most popular school choice program here in Arizona, the Empowerment Scholarship Account Program. This proposed anti-ESA initiative has been bankrolled by the National Education Association. They have poured over $7 million into Arizona from this Washington, D.C.-based union. The other group that is supporting the measure is Save Our Schools, a local anti-school choice organization that has been fighting school choice and the ESA program for over a decade here in the state. After their petitions were filed, a group of school choice organizations led by the Goldwater Institute began a review of the petitions to see whether or not they had collected enough actual lawful, valid signatures to qualify for the ballot. The Free Enterprise Club was an organization that participated in this review. After a review of these signatures, the Goldwater Institute filed a lawsuit to challenge the validity of these signatures that were submitted with the Secretary of State. Joining us today to talk about school choice, this anti-ESA measure, and the petition challenge is Jenny Clark, the founder of Love Your Schools here in Arizona. Love Your Schools has been around for how long now?
Since 2018.
2018,
2019 is when we launched.
Great. Jenny is a mother of 5, an Arizona native, and is also the plaintiff on this school choice petition challenge that was filed just last week. So Jenny, thank you again for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
So before we dive into the initiative and the challenge and everything else going school choice related, give a little bit of background. How did you get involved in the school choice fight here in Arizona?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a stay-at-home mom. I had decided with my husband to homeschool our kids. And throughout that process of home educating, we discovered that our 2 oldest boys had dyslexia. So we went through the public school evaluation process. And, initially we were told, it's just lack of a proper education. But as we pushed on through that process, we discovered the dyslexia. And at the time, we were able to get onto the Empowerment Scholarship after doing some online charter school for a period of time. You might remember the law used to require all of these horrible hoops for families who had a student with a disability. And that process was so difficult at the time to qualify for the ESA. So we started in 2017, didn't even get onto the scholarship until 2018, that I thought we have got to help families. We've got to help families navigate this school choice process, this incredible Empowerment Scholarship Account Program. And also, we need to make the policy better and change the policy so that it's universal, because all Arizona families deserve to have access to the school option that best meets their needs. And that is why we started Love Your School. So I was involved back, on Prop 305, the first attempt at universal ESA. And I just started kind of doing TV interviews and promoting and putting signs up, driving around with all my kids in the car, putting signs up, because I just believed so passionately about school choice, because our family was just living it. The public school told us, we do not have any dyslexia-specific programs for your kid. If they had, we would have enrolled, but they didn't. And so ESA became this lifeline that we needed.
Yeah, and when you got involved in the program back then, it was primarily for, I think it was military families and families with some sort of special needs or something that needed additional help. And
that's right.
Now it's universal. It's been almost 5 years now. Program's been made universal here in Arizona. Over 100,000 people are now enrolled and using the program. Over 100,000 students now using the program.
Oh, yes. And that number is probably going to go up. I mean, we're in the first quarter right now. Parents are still signing renewal contracts. Parents are still applying for ESAs right now. I bet in the next month or so, we're at 110,000 students. And just think about how rapidly that program has grown since Universal first happened, meaning every student in Arizona qualifies, kindergarten through 12th grade, for an empowerment scholarship scholarship if they want to opt out of the public school and take their education dollars to the environment that works for them. We have so much more promoting to do. We have so many more people we need to talk to. I really think that number is going to continue to grow. But as you know, and I'm looking forward to talking about, we have to protect and defend the program that we have so that families will continue to have access.
Yeah, and one of the myths that's always told about this as well is that the program is only being used by upper income individuals. Yet you start looking at the demographics,
right.
where the scholarships are being awarded.
That's right.
And it runs the gamut. I mean, everybody, once they learn about this, families, and they learn about these opportunities, they're learning about it. They're taking time to research it, and it's clear that quite a few different categories, classification people are using ESAs now.
Oh, absolutely. And not just families from various different levels of socioeconomic status, but families across political parties too. That's something that I explain to people all the time because we work directly with parents, talking to them about school choice and helping them navigate both the public school system and potentially an ESA or homeschool or private school. Your child being bullied doesn't depend on what your political party is. Your child having a disability that impacts their education, it doesn't depend on what political party your parents are. So families from all backgrounds, from all, different political parties are looking to school choice as the answer for their kids. They just want their kids to get a great education. That's why this is such a significant issue, because families want choice regardless maybe of what their background was. I went to public school. I graduated from Arizona public schools, kindergarten through 12th grade. Never did I imagine that my children might need something different than what I had, or even that our family might decide to do something different. But families all across Arizona are loving their choice. And let's just say these, anti-parent activist groups were right. And that, maybe only a certain subset of families were using the ESA, which we know is not true. That just means that we probably need to advertise more. We need to do more outreach. We need to engage more so that those families know what their choices are. So it doesn't necessarily mean that, this program isn't good. It means we need to advertise more and make sure parents know what their choices are.
Absolutely. And I'm always amazed by families that move from other states and they come here and they are just blown away.
They are.
In a good way.
They are.
By the options that are provided. And I'm glad you hit on the issues related to bullying and others, because part of this is, people's concerns about the quality of the education they might be getting in their local district school or their local public school. But that's not always the case.
That's right.
Sometimes the choice, the people need choices because it's a culture issue or an environment issue or the interest of their children.
Yeah, that's right.
A one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't seem to work. And it's clear just based on the number of people that have went and enrolled in the ESA program that it's wildly popular. Choice is wildly popular with Arizonans.
School choice is wildly popular in Arizona and across the country, and families are unwilling to go back, right? This idea that you should only go to school within the zip code that your home is in, that idea has been long gone in Arizona. And now with empowerment scholarships, families are doing even more exciting and incredible things. I also think that people may not realize that families are making different choices even year to year. There might be a season of a family's life where, public school isn't the answer because of bullying or other factors. We have a lot of families that come to us and their children are dealing with, anxiety or other illnesses. And so being able to jump onto an empowerment scholarship, to receive those dollars to pay for at-home tutors and therapists and other kind of specialty things, and to get services and support immediately, that is completely life-changing for a child and for their entire trajectory of a child's education. So yeah, sometimes it just means a family's jumping to an ESA for a year or two, and then maybe they do want to even go back to a district or charter or a private school. You have that choice in Arizona. There are dozens of other states where families are trapped. Those kids are trapped. They never have that option. That's tragic.
Yeah. And when you're talking about, when you're looking at this from just a perspective of saying you're pro school choice, it doesn't mean you're anti-public school or anti-district school. You don't have to be. Those aren't mutually exclusive. You can like all the different options that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And And that's what's so crazy is after the empowerment scholarship went universal, I had all of these teachers reach out to me because, I'm from Arizona. Some of these people are people I went to college with, I went to high school with, and they're teachers and principals now. And they would send me messages, and I would never share their names or disclose any of that. But they would send me messages and they would say, hey, I used to be worried about school choice. I used to be worried about empowerment scholarships, maybe back in 2017, 2018. But they're like, now I tell families about it because I see these kids and I care about them and I care about their education. And I want their parents to know you have this choice. If this isn't working out for you, you have this other choice. So even teachers are, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, they are now becoming fans of school choice, not only for their own kids, but for the families that they know. They're telling them about it.
Yeah, and that's only going to continue to grow. I mean, there's just going to be, from the general public, there's going to be continued growing support for school choice, but clearly there is organized and relentless opposition to these programs. Been wanting to kill them for over a decade.
That's right.
And largely it's coming from those that want to keep the system the way it was. For a variety of reasons. They want to keep the system the way it was. Yes. You go to your district school, that's the only place you can get an education. Yep. And they want to turn back the clock. And primarily it's the teachers union, and then a lot of these different localized, usually far left groups like Save Our Schools. And so they've been for years, even since this went universal, trying to roll back this success. And now this year it's culminated in they have introduced a ballot measure. Went out and collected signatures, as I mentioned before, bankrolled by the National Teachers Union to roll back the Empowerment Scholarship Program here in the state. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Why is this going to kill school choice here in Arizona?
Yeah, absolutely. So this group, this anti-parent activist organization, that's what I call them, Save Our Schools Arizona. They formed around the same time that Love Your School formed, right? I mean, right there, just look at that. Save Our Schools, not about the kids, right? Save Our Schools Arizona in their name. And Love Your School, an organization that is all about parents and parents' rights and parents having choices for their kids, public school, private school, homeschool, ESA, whatever it may be. So this organization is so focused on trapping kids in schools that maybe the parents don't necessarily want them in because they're anti-school choice. This Protect Education Act, laughably named, right? What they are trying to do is ultimately dismantle all school choice options in Arizona. So one of the things that a lot of families and listeners need to understand is that these people cannot be trusted. Okay, they have a pattern and a history of lying to voters, lying to their volunteers, lying to parents, right? They came out years ago and said, when they knew they didn't, we have all the signatures, we're going to stop universal ESA. And they did a press conference and they went on camera when they knew they didn't even have the signatures. So there's a pattern here of very concerning and untrustworthy behavior. And ultimately that matters because they're out here saying now, oh, well, we just care about, those special needs families that are on the Empowerment Scholarship. We want to protect the program for them, but we really don't think that hardworking Arizona taxpayers who might make over $150,000 a year, that they should have access to this scholarship. We know that that's a lie too. These people opposed school choice, opposed the Empowerment Scholarship, even back when it was only military families and families who had a student with a disability. So first of all, we need to understand that anything that they're saying cannot be trusted. But ultimately, this is just step one in the National Teachers Union's attempt to funnel their dark money into Arizona and to control Arizona families like mine and like yours by saying, you don't get any choices anymore. That was nice that you had some options. We're going to spend enough money and we're going to snatch those choices away from your kids. It's going to start with ESA. It's going to get rolled back, and they are going to come after charter schools. They're going to come after private schools. They're going to come after homeschools. This is their plan.
Yeah, and it seems like the initiative on that ESA side attacks many of those groups you just described. And the probably the biggest hit on this immediate is going to be the income cap that you described, that they put this income cap on households and set it up in a way in which probably 20 to 25,000 children
Oh,
are going to
absolutely.
immediately lose their scholarships.
And that number will be higher year after year, the $150,000 number. And one of the things we have to keep explaining to our friends, to our family, to listeners, is that there is no income cap for families who are attending the public school. More, supposedly wealthy families attend public school at a higher cost to the taxpayer, right? They're not paying for it, but it's a higher cost to the taxpayer than supposedly wealthy families that are on an empowerment scholarship. So that tells you right now, this isn't about, these families can afford private school. This is about control. That is what they want, is control of families, control of what they're learning, and they don't want them to have choices. Because we know the empowerment scholarship over time saves Arizona's budget and saves taxpayers. This is all about controlling choices for families. I think that's wrong, and it's actually, quite frankly, scary.
And to me, it's scary that the idea that, we're talking tens of thousands of families that are going to lose their scholarship, lose their school, who did nothing wrong, all because they want to push this measure. And as you listen to them and watch the other side talk about this, they conveniently leave that part out of that initiative. They don't want to talk about the cap. They don't want to talk about tens of thousands of students losing their scholarships. They don't want to talk about the disabled community that's going to have their funds swept and taken away, scholarship money taken away from them. They focus instead on these arguments about accountability and guardrails. And as you were trying to, you're bringing up the fact that they're disingenuous, trying to say, we do care about the program. We just want to put guardrails around it. And that seems to be what they're kind of trying to package this around. What's your response to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about accountability, right? That seems to be the thing that they want to talk about. So let's talk about it as it relates to the public school, and then bring in the ESA program. I'm all about accountability, but answer me this question, Save Our Schools Arizona. What accountability does a parent have if they are one of the only 34% of Arizona fourth graders who tested proficient? There's over 70% that basically are not proficient in Arizona in reading in fourth grade. Do they get their money back? Are you going to pay for their tutoring? What are you going to do? There's no accountability in the public school system if your child is not learning. You can hire an attorney. You got to be wealthy to hire an attorney. But Arizona students are struggling. And so the idea that testing, right, or all of these types of things that they push are somehow going to, solve the problem. They haven't solved the problem for kids in the public school system. There's very little accountability that the average parent can take to the public school if that school has failed their child, if their child is not reading proficiently by third grade. And the nation's report card tells us that those numbers are absolutely abysmal. It is a crisis. So the idea that somehow if we added, let's say, testing or more restrictions on how the funds could be spent is somehow accountability, we know that that's just not the case. Why would we take cues on accountability from a system that has accountability but hasn't produced the results? That's where those of us who are passionate about things like free markets, who are passionate about parental rights and control, we know what accountability is. I know that if a school is not servicing my child and I'm using an empowerment scholarship, guess what? I can pull my child and take them somewhere else. If a tutor isn't working for my kid, guess what? I can immediately switch to a different tutor next week. Families in the public school system where there is supposed accountability, they don't have those choices. They can't hold the public school accountable. So I completely reject the idea that somehow adding these types of things to the ESA program is going to appease these people, right? These opponents. It's not going to do anything but make the program more difficult for the families it was designed to serve. And we have to protect this program and protect the free market foundation of this program, because that's what's producing results for Arizona kids.
And it's why there's over 100,000 families that are in the program. It's why it's so popular. But even specifically, you talk about the fraud issues. And I don't care what program you're talking about. There might always be people that are going to want to abuse a program or misuse a program. That's just going to happen. And I don't think any of the honest people that are using the program want to see that happen either. They want to see those people that are
absolutely.
And so if this was just a debate about let's deal with fraud and let's get that out of the system, I don't think there's anybody that's opposed to that. There's no pro-fraud people out there that are
Of course.
That's not the problem. But that's not what this initiative does. And it's clear that's what they want to talk about, but then avoid all the other things that this initiative is going to do, because I think that they have realized that, you know what, this is wildly popular.
Yep.
And you know what, we can't even talk about those things, which is interesting because a few years ago, and how they used to fight against school choices, they would always say this is going to defund public schools, which is a total lie. Public schools, since the implementation of universal ESAs, their funding has went up by billions of dollars in Arizona. They haven't seen a reduction.
The largest part of Arizona's budget is K-12 education. And when we explain that to people, they're shocked because they've been hearing a narrative that is completely false from these activist union groups that says that there's not enough money, but there actually is. It's just being misspent and it's not making it to the classroom.
And if they actually cared about fraud, just last year with Isaac Elementary, tens of millions of dollars that just went missing. The unions and the Save Our School groups, they seem disinterested in that. So if this is really about solving fraud, it should be holistic. And that's something that we've always advocated for. Let's solve fraud. Let's solve holistically. Let's make sure there's no fraud in the ESA program.
Absolutely.
Let's make sure there's no fraud in district schools. And we can all work together on that. But the reality is that their axe to grind is they want to kill the program.
That's
and
exactly
that's what it is. So the media on this as well has just been relentless in supporting the Save Our Schools groups. I won't get into specifics on certain media members that do that. But what's your strategy and approach on how to fight back against that? Because a lot of the local media groups just seem completely in the tank for the unions on this.
And it's been so disappointing to see what the media has done and how they've covered the empowerment scholarship, how they've covered the Protect Education Act. It's so disappointing because the facts are there and they just don't want to look at them. They don't want to report on how popular the ESA program is. So one of our approaches has been through this whole time, both at Love Your School and then specifically to AZ Loves ESAs, has been to tell those stories, but also we like to do what we call kill them with content, right? Mm-hmm. We put out a lot of videos. I put out a lot of videos on Instagram, recorded in my car or in front of my house or in different places, just talking to people, talking to parents. We don't even put money behind some of these videos. And, they'll get 100,000 views within a week. That's what we have to do because they have the media. The media is their friend. And the media, even when I try to
we're talking about the legacy media, the legacy corporate media.
The legacy corporate media does not want to tell the story about how school choice is benefiting families and why they're making these choices. We'll bring them stories and say, look at this child that was being bullied that's thriving on an ESA. And they're like, well, we want to talk about this thing over here. And we saw that, right? We saw that when there was a huge news story a couple weeks ago showing how some of this legacy media was actually coordinating in a chat group with Save Our Schools Arizona and these union folks. They are literally coordinating together. So what we try to do is we try to ignore them, quite frankly, because their arguments are kind of tired and old. And I think a lot of people see through them. And then we create our own content and share our own stories, which so many of us are having to do now because we can't get any fair reporting from legacy media.
No. So let's turn to this ballot initiative and the challenge. As I mentioned before, last week, the signature challenge was filed after review was done. They claimed they turned in just over 420,000 signatures. Probably one of the first things that jumped out to me was the unions and Save Our Schools kept claiming that, this is a volunteer effort. And these are citizen, this is a citizen-led initiative, citizen-gathered signatures. Turned out not to be the case, right?
That's right. Turned out not to be the case. And I think we all knew that. But again, it's just so crazy how they will come out and say these things when what we've seen is actually closer to 80% plus of these gatherers were paid. Some of them, from out of state, crazy backgrounds. I know we're going to talk about that. But literally what happened is the National Education Association poured a bunch of money into the union groups here in Arizona to get this whole thing going. And it wasn't volunteers. It was paid gatherers. I was approached about 14 times in front of grocery stores with my kids at my car, just really inappropriate and aggressive behavior from these signature gatherers. Not once, because I recorded almost all these interactions, not once was I accurately told what this Protect Education Act was really going to do for these kids on the program, including the special needs kids. It was lie after lie after lie, and it was paid gatherers. So it was not volunteer. It was not grassroots. Most of these people were not even in, maybe originally from Arizona.
And that's why in Arizona, if you want to be a paid circulator, which that is legal here in Arizona, you can go out and actually be paid to go collect signatures for these types of efforts. But you do need to register, and you do have to follow various laws and rules, partly because you don't want people defrauding and disenfranchising the process.
Right.
And one of those is what you just described, which is it's against the law to go out and mislead and lie to voters to get them to sign a petition, yet you encounter that over and over again.
Over and over again. One of the videos that we recorded outside of a library was where a gatherer told me that if I signed this, kind of thing you put in front of me, they didn't even call it the Protect Education Act. If I signed this kind of thing in front of me, that it would help low-income kids go to college. That is what I was told. That is what we have recorded. And there's just dozens of other recordings and videos that we have. So I myself and others were regularly lied to. And I'll tell you a really interesting story about a woman who was gathering outside the library close to my house. And it was, right by Costco, lots of traction. I went and got a sign, and I held my decline to sign up there for about an hour while she was gathering. I recorded the whole time. And then I had a conversation with this woman who was being paid by the other side to gather these signatures. She had no idea what the Empowerment Scholarship account was. She had no idea what she was actually gathering signatures for. At one point, and I never shared this video because I felt for this woman, she sat on the bench while I stood there with my sign, and she just listened to me explain the ESA. And this woman had a child that had gone through the public school system who had autism, and he never learned to read. She said he was now in a group home in Arizona, and he never learned to read. And I explained that students right now with autism, their only choice is not the public school system. And she was like, what? Are you kidding me? I could have had a scholarship like this to send my child to a specialty school. They did not tell me that I was gathering signatures for something that would stop students with disabilities. And she was a mom of a student with a disability who just wished she had had something like an ESA. I don't know what happened to her after that time. It was very somber situation. We parted on very good terms. But even these gatherers were being lied to about what this ballot proposition would do. And
the own committee's lying to the very employees that they're hiring.
That's exactly right. They're lying to the very people they hired to gather signatures against this initiative. That's horrifying.
Yeah, and that gets into the entire conduct throughout this process and what was uncovered during this signature review. The challenge that was filed is challenging over half the signatures that were collected,
right.
More than enough to disqualify the measure once this gets heard in court. But doing this review, you start looking at these paid circulators and you start discovering some of these people are the worst of the worst. Kidnappers,
right.
Human smugglers.
Yeah, child molesters and abusers.
Yes, and that was one of the big ones is they actually had a registered sex offender.
Yep.
Level 3, the highest level, most dangerous, level 3 sex offender, hired by the unions, the committee of the unions, and others that claim that they care about children to go out into the community and get people that can't even be around children to gather signatures.
And they were wearing their shirts. And they were out there gathering signatures, and people were giving their name, their address, their phone number to people who had been convicted of these crimes.
Of frauds and forgery. People that were carrying forgery devices, rampant, convictions on fraud, going out and gathering signatures on behalf to get this passed. And so, from my perspective, it just exposes the hypocrisy of all of this because it gets back into what they're claiming this initiative does. Because they don't want to talk about the old arguments as you described them because they have discovered those don't move or persuade people. So they want to focus on, we need accountability, we need to crack down, we need background checks, we need these other things. Yet they turned around and hired dozens of convicted felons, the worst of the worst, to try to kill school choice in Arizona. Yeah. And they had no accountability, and then
no accountability whatsoever. And we've got to point this stuff out, right? Because when you first hear about it, you're like, surely that's not the case. But it actually is. These people are so arrogant with how they're presenting kind of their arguments. They're like over here talking about accountability and then hiring people that you would not want your children to even be in the same room with. They're untrustworthy.
Yeah, it's just it becomes clear that they don't care about anything else besides the outcome that they want. And a lot of this, again, is just it's total hypocrisy on their side. They don't they want rules for other people, but it doesn't seem like they want the same rules to apply to themselves.
That's absolutely right.
So looking to November. Okay, we have this school choice fight. Hopefully, the signature challenge is successful to knock it off the ballot. But the other big thing, go ahead into this election is that a lot of this energy to try to kill school choice in Arizona has been emanating from the governor's office. It's been coming from Governor Katie Hobbs.
Absolutely has.
She has been adamantly opposed to school choice. She's been every year talking about how she wants to roll back the scholarship, empowerment scholarship program here in the state. And now she's up for re-election. Big election with her opponent. It's going to be Andy Biggs. He just won the primary.
That's right.
What do you think is in store? How do you think school choice could play a role in this upcoming November election related to the governor's race?
Well, school choice is going to play a huge role in the upcoming election. If the Democrats want to keep being anti-parent empowerment, anti-education freedom, student and parent choice when it comes to education, they are going to continue to lose. Because as I spoke about before, school choice is a winning issue. And if your child is being bullied, your child is a student with a disability, all these different things, the political party of your parent is not part of that equation. So we have families who are Republicans and Democrats and independents that are utilizing school choice and love it. And this just goes to show you, Katie Hobbs is not out there thinking about what is best for Arizona kids, what is best for Arizona businesses, that kids have choices, what is best for students with disability. She is literally puppeting out arguments against these kids and against these families because she is receiving, funding and backing from the National Education Association and these teacher union groups. It's not about what's best for kids or actually even what's best for Arizona. And so I think that's a real problem for her and for any other Democrats that continue to be against school choice. For Republicans have always embraced school choice. And what Republicans need to continue to do is protect and defend the wonderful empowerment scholarship account program that we have right now, because that is what works. That is what parents want. We have the most flexible program in the entire country, and we need to keep it that way. We can't give in to the arguments of these groups that don't care about the program at all. They will never be satisfied. It's not just about guardrails. It's not just about testing. It's not just about these things. It's about destroying the program. And so, conservatives, Republicans, they need to stand firm because the program, the way that it is working. And it's not working just for the parents. It's working for businesses. Arizona, compared to other states that have ESA programs that are more regulated, Arizona has seen more private schools start, more tutoring companies start, more people come here for our program specifically because of its flexibility. We know that when you attempt to over-regulate programs, vendors drop out, parents drop out, people do not want to participate anymore. And that is a very real threat to this program that we have to make sure, people that are running for office are aware of.
That's great. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And everybody watching, thank you again for joining us here at the State Room, where we cover the key issues and events that will keep Arizona free. Thank you for watching.